Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Surfers. I hope that you enjoyed your solstice and getting through the holidays okay. So, I had a special interview last time out, and one of the ongoing themes is going to be around the control of our thoughts and being, the ownership of our own mind. And we've been through a previous Omniwar Symposium on the technology to do with mind warfare. So I suggest you go look at that one. And so today I wanted to get into the most recent Omniwar as well. And some of the recent videos that I've done here has been around the using of false flag events and shootings and things of that nature for divide and conquer, and to get people fighting amongst themselves, while as the rollout of things like the banning of weapons and then this kind of narrative around free speech. So I could probably pull it up, but I didn't actually have this one preloaded. But basically. Went through it before. There's a pushback from the New South Wales Premier in Australia in regards to the US style of free speech, and there's a clear move towards tech censorship. And so this first, let's take a look at Australian University agenda for what's being rolled out today. You thought that was the end of age verification from tomorrow, which is today now. Everyone under 18 will be forced to verify their age just to use search engines like Google and DuckDuckGo, and that's just the start. So that's what he says.
The next age verification change to the internet in Australia starts tomorrow, and unlike the social media ban,
that this law applies to everybody.
From tomorrow, age verification rules are going to apply to online search. If you sign into your account and you're detected as under 18, you're going to be asked to prove your age using government ID, credit card checks, or facial recognition. You can still search without logging in, but content will be blurred by default in child-friendly mode. And this is just the beginning. More age verification is coming in the new year. AI chatbots like ChatGPT, video games, and eventually the entire App Store will be forced to comply by mid-2026. And that's why I've teamed up with Citizen Go to launch.
Yeah, so that's what we have going on. So the Hegelian dialectic and problem, reaction, solution. So today I want to get into psychic self-protection before and after this video, and then getting into this symposium. But I wanted to start with Salvatore Pais, who is Navy breakthrough energy engineer with a lot of patents and things like that. I've had him, we've been through some of his work here before, and this is about weapons and warfare going beyond time and space. So I wanted to play this for a few minutes.
And gravity are related. But put it this way, with a little bit of modification, certain craft that have been observed could be turned into temporal weapons, weapons of time, which would greatly disrupt the arsenals of nations. What we are talking about here is an absolute revolution in the way we fight wars. Imagine the ability to win all wars even before these wars are fought. That is the power of weapons of time.
Wow.
And it all starts with a very simple relationship. Time is on the order of 1 divided by frequency, either of spin and or vibration. I choose vibration because, just like the great Nikola Tesla, I believe that one can engineer vibration far better than one can engineer actual spin, because you run into engineering problems. when you spin, for example, anything greater than maybe half a foot in diameter, the centrifugal loading on this material it just pushes it apart. It's extremely hard to spin anything of great, how should I say, anything greater than maybe 1 foot in diameter, spun at say 100,000 RPM. So we're talking about 10,000 radians per second. No way in hell that thing will come apart. So again, you can achieve with vibration certain effects that you cannot achieve with the actual spin. But anyway, sorry for giving such an interesting thing. But I thought I would start with this and get your juices flowing so we can interact on this kind of basis.
It seems when you touched on Tesla, I mean, he said that frequency and resonance was the key to everything. And you're, from my extremely limited understanding of your work, it seems like an electronic resonance, like a feedback generator. And I've got all sorts of probably ridiculous questions for later, but I'm absolutely fascinated.
Resonance is an important phenomenon in physics. Many times it is overlooked, and sometimes it's not even touched upon, because people always speak of energy conservation. Where is this extra energy coming from? I will not go there, because the explanation of exactly what so-called zero-point energy, vacuum energy state, there's no point in, how should I say, in getting your followers to go past the idea that quote unquote weapons of time are feasible. Not only feasible, but engineerable at this point in time. So the way we fight wars, I prophesy here on your pod that the way we fight wars within the next 10 years will change dramatically. Not only because of the introduction of possible, if not AGI itself, pre-AGI, artificial intelligence possibilities, but also this understanding and the nature of time. The understanding that time is not an illusion, but a real physical phenomena. Unlike the great Julian Barbour, the great Carlo Rovelli, even lately, even the great Lee Smolin, who have started to, well, for a while they have believed that this is an illusionary factor. I believe that time is of great significance. And let me briefly explain. Think of space. Space is a macroscopic quantum structure from which the very fabric of our cosmic reality arises. Now think of time as a peculiar form of informational energy which permeates the structure. The marriage of the two, the synthesis, the bonding of the two, space-time, the space-time continuum, a la the great Hermann Minkowski, is extremely important for understanding that if you have the ability to break apart, to rip, to tear apart locally the space-time continuum, this fabric of our reality, it may be possible to destroy the arrow of time. Hence, Stephen Hawking's great understanding of what he calls the chronology protection conjecture, hence time travel to the past being impossible, is ruled null and void. You break the Schwinger limit locally, you tear apart locally the space-time fabric, you can time travel to the past. We're talking about reverse temporal excursion, and it all starts with this very, very simple mathematical formalism. Time is on the order of 1 divided by frequency, either of actual spin or vibration. I choose vibration. From there, with simple differential calculus, one takes the chain rule, and you get something on your minus delta t, physical representation of reverse temporal excursion, equals tau sub s, which is a dimensionless constant, times the delta omega, which would be your frequency of vibration, say, divided by omega squared, frequency of vibration squared. That's how simple it is, gentlemen. And I guarantee that whatever these craft are, and I choose to believe that many of them are craft, I will not in any way go against the idea that some of these may be phenomena. However, much of it is craft. And these craft have the ability to manipulate time. You understand what time is? It's that peculiar form or type of informational, again, based on information, which the great John Archibald Wheeler, as well as von Neumann, the great von Neumann, believe that is at the very fundamental structure of our universe. It is all about information. The eye that looks at itself. There was the great Wheeler. Never got his Nobel Prize, but Feynman did, his pupil. So, yeah.
So, yeah, I wanted to bring that into the conversation for a number of reasons. We've got the observable, objective nature of reality, and again, it gets into this time part of it, being an emergent property that is objective, and the ways in which wars are going to be fought, going to be using time, temporal time technology. What was the phrase that he used? Like traversable, whatever the phrase is. And so that gets me on to the last video that I want to show. Bringing in this kind of warfare, this really advanced warfare, which does cross over into UFO stuff. It does cross over into future humans. It does get into it's going beyond time and space, but coming at it, in my view, we need to come at this from, again, using these same principles that this is knowable, and this is part of a objective reality. And so, one of the things that we've got to balance, and one of the things that came out of the Blue Lily interview that I did with Casey Blackburn, I do think that I can handle interviews better in the future, and maybe we can talk some more. But she's very gifted at going at understanding things like what we're about to get into now, which is like psychic self-defense and taking absolute ownership of your mind. Beyond the external. And so as we go through this process of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, there is this information gathering part, so we aren't ignorant. And then, there is this balancing act in a way of, focusing our attention on these dark aspects, but then also having true care for life. And so the phrase that came through, a couple of phrases that came through were childlike wonder and merging with life. So it's that merging with life rather than just like the defense against the evil, which both are important, but this is where the masculine and feminine qualities come in. But I also just wanted to speak to that merging with life part, some of these rejuvenation practices and kind of that creative outlet, which is that wisdom, rather than just reacting to the negative, so to speak. That being said, way to do that is psychic self-defense. So if we have psychic self-defense, then we can go into that that still place, that having that empty cup and receiving, so we can create in alignment with natural law. So I wanted to bring up this interview on Chris Jantzen Show, End Evil podcast, where Mark Passio went on there yesterday, the day before. Yesterday, I believe it was, and there was a section that he pulled out of his shadow work seminar, which is around a Freemason practice, and before everyone loses their mind. like a lot of things, there are these original teachings. I don't believe in any formalized version of whatever, any religion, any whatever it is. But that doesn't mean that there's not true wisdom in principles. And one of the ones that comes out of that is a Tyling of the Lodge, and being the protector of your own mind and ownership of your mind and psychic self-defense. So I wanted to play that here.
Because, what if they come back and get me? What if people don't like me? What if, we got to be brave. And that requires a level of understanding the value of what we have to offer the world, and then to defend that. That's so right. That we can actually do that job. And I find that to be one of the more challenging aspects for me, is learning to tile my lodge. And so I was hoping you could talk about that and what that means.
I love the question. It's so pertinent. It's so important. I felt like I could not deliver a presentation of this length without going into at least a couple areas of esoteric symbolism and the occult, because of course shadow work is an occult concept. It is an initiatory concept that deals with a lot of occult ideas and factors. And, one of them is exactly what you were talking about, a form of self-defense that is actually psychic self-defense, psychological and mental defense against intrusive and distorted and distracting thoughts. This is part of what in all occult work, specifically in shadow work, is known as the principle of indistractibility. And this is something that, sadly, evil people in our world, people who are really currently controlling the dynamics of our world and trying to put people into a state of enslavement, and dark occultists and social engineers, they understand this dynamic, this concept, unbelievably well, and they teach it to and deeply instill it and ingrain it in their children, in their youth. It is something that they do continuously, and they consider one of the most important things for maintaining their level of control that they have over this world and tightening it. And the very same principles and concepts can be learned by people with good intentions who do want freedom to be the goal, true freedom, and they can employ it in their lives. So this is known as the principle of non-distractibility. And what it means is, if you're going to attempt to achieve a life goal, an endeavor of some type, you have to remain totally in the present moment and focused. And there are techniques for doing those things. We talked a lot in the seminar about present moment awareness. We talked a lot about getting in the zone and staying focused and practicing concentrative techniques, right? But you also have to allow space to come in so that the mind can bring in new ideas. And if you already have a million things bouncing around in your mind and you can't quiet the mind, you're not going to be in a position to learn. That's why so many people are poor learners. I encounter people in the movement. They're never quiet. They're never silent. And they're not getting out any information, really. They're just waiting to speak, to debate, and to be confrontative and combative. They're not really trying to flesh out ideas and come to an accurate understanding. Often all they're doing is trying to spout existing distorted thought and religious notions. And once again, I don't just mean the cultural religions. I mean like authority is necessary as a religion. I mean like truth is relative is a religion. Things like that, okay? All distorted thought forms are religious thought. Okay, not just the cultural religions of like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, etc. Okay, that's a concept that has to be clearly understood. Religious is any distorted thought form that interferes with the reception of truth in one's life. So this is part of what people have to understand is, in order to learn, you have to quiet the mind so that it is actually in a listening and receiving mode, as like a vessel, like a cup that can now receive. If I want an entire glass of orange juice in this mug, my old Slim Jim mug from when I was a kid that my grandmother had at her little mom and pop store that has survived probably since the 1980s. Okay. If I want to put a full glass of orange juice in here, this water cannot stay in there, or I'll get a half a glass of really watered down orange juice. So in order to make the space for what I want, I have to first empty the water from the glass. Very simple concept. But people never really think of this when it comes to mental processes and learning. If you're going to learn something new, you can't have a bunch of competing ideas bouncing around in between your ears. You have to learn how to quiet the mind and make the internal dialogue shut the fuck up. See, one of my slides was shadow work requires shutting the fuck up and listening. You're not going to succeed at mental or any kind of self-improvement if there's constant chatter in the brain spreading fear, doubt, misunderstanding, distorted thought, on and on and on. So part of the psychic self-defense that you learn in the shadow work process is you, number one, learn how to quiet the mind. So this is done through the technique of transcendental meditation. Transcendental meditation.
And there are obviously other forms of meditation as well. I've not got into transcendental meditation myself, but there's different techniques, obviously, of quieting the mind in different meditations as well, not just that.
Or TM just means you are not going to think any structured thoughts. You're going to let your mind simply not think for a time. And if that becomes slightly difficult and thoughts come in, you focus them on what's known as a mantra, which is simply one thought. So it eliminates all others except the one. And you make it something simple, like I am. That's it, right? I exist, or I think, or I feel, or whatever. You just say one mantra, right? Or you say, I'm simply going to focus on breathing. And then the mantra can become in, out, and just repeat in, out. You could do a billion different styles of mantras for meditating. But what it's doing is it's emptying all other thought from the mind. And you're not going from thought to thought to thought to thought to thought in this weird nebulous haze. And what it's doing is it's just allowing your mind to be and to wait for information. That's how you really learn. If someone's going to really, really, really learn, and they're determined and focused on learning, nothing's going to stop them from learning. They're going to empty the mind of everything else. This idea of multitasking is bullshit. Okay? You don't multitask. Multitasking sets you up for failure at all your tasks because you divide attention, you're distracted by the other tasks, and then you don't do any of the individuated tasks to the best of your ability, to the very best of your capability. So you don't multitask, you focus on one thing, and you empty the mind of all competing thoughts. And I liken this process, what helps solidify this process as a concept is, if we can think about it symbolically, and this is what part of Freemasonry from an esoteric perspective, not just lodge masonry, but true, what they used to call speculative masonry, which is the esoteric side of the so-called craft of Freemasonry, as an occult tradition and a collection of occult teachings for self-betterment, because you're building the self into a better vehicle of expression for consciousness in our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. Again, those three stages being the three stages of main stages of Freemasonry: the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and then of course the master mason degrees. And then it goes into further levels of complexity beyond that, of course. But these basic three steps are the stages of the trivium. They are the aspects of human consciousness. And it's all about keeping focus so that you can move yourself toward your intended and stated goal. And how you do that is, and the concept symbolically in Freemasonry is called Tyling the Lodge, Tyling T-I-N-G, tiling. The tiler of the lodge is one of the members of the lodge who is charged with the defense of the lodge. And what they're really talking about symbolically in Freemasonry, in the esoteric form of it, is the lodge is actually the mind. The lodge is the human mind, the individuated mind. And the tiler is the aspect of psychic self-defense that waits at the door or the opening to the mind, and the door is locked and the tiler stands outside of the door so that when the lodge proceeds with its business, whatever that happens to be, the tiler does not allow intruders into the lodge. You see the allegory. It's wonderful. It's brilliant. Okay? It's saying you have to first open the mind for the reception of the concept and idea by emptying the mind, right? The lodge is first empty before people arrive and show up to do business. But then it receives the individuals. And then a tiler goes outside the door and says, no more are to enter. And the business of the lodge is being conducted and no distractions or intrusions. That's the principle of indistractibility, of not allowing intrusive and distorted thought into the lodge of the mind once the business of self-improvement and moving toward your stated goals has begun. And I find it brilliant, as I do many symbolic and occult traditions, which is why I've studied them over the years and why I teach their true allegorical meanings. And if people can understand that, they'll see the richness in traditions like that and perhaps explore them further. Not necessarily by entering the lodge system. I don't really think that's a truly great idea at the time in history in which we live. I think they're very fallen and distorted themselves. But in studying the tradition from an eclectic perspective, through information that is available to us at our fingertips, through books and videos and lectures, etc. And I think if they do that, they'll find it a tremendously empowering from a self-improvement perspective tradition, and find a lot of richness in the allegory and symbol contained therein. So that is my explanation of the concept of tiling the lodge that I covered in the recent Shadow Work seminar. I think it was one of the more powerful esoteric ideas that I explored in that presentation.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring that up because, we've also gone through several previous episodes as well when I was getting quite fired up as well with, people dealing with impositions and thought forms and intrusive thoughts and all that kind of thing. So obviously, if we can take full responsibility and tile our own lodge and have the ability to receive information like we're about to in this Omniwar Symposium, then we are able to gather the information, process it effectively, and then create without those distortions in our field. So, without further ado, the main event of today, that's 11:55, boom, is the Omniwar, and it's academia weighs in on the digital attack on humanity. Now, this is Patrick Wood and David Hughes and all of those guys. So, when we talk about Hegelian dialectic or problem reaction solution, went through the Bondi stuff, went through the slavery system and the impositions and all of that. So, we're tiling our own lodge and all of that. We're receiving this information of where things are going. And then so once we have the wisdom, then it's about speaking truth and changing things. So this is not blackpilling at all. This is not being passive in terms of just constantly looking into darkness. This is to empower ourselves so we can move forward and to choose that timeline that everyone's always talking about that doesn't involve this kind of transhumanist technocracy, occultocracy, cartel, whichever buzzwords we want to use, which is obviously trying to get us to go down this pathway of pre-crime, surveillance, restrictive measures, digital ID, different things with cryptocurrencies and stable coins and to do with debt and usury and So let's get this is the latest symposium. So this will go for about 5 hours, guys. So we'll see if we go through it all today or not. But let's get into it.
Welcome to Building Empire on the Backs of Digital Slaves. I'm Patrick Wood for Technocracy News and Trends, and also for the study group on technology and power. This is the Omniwar Symposium. We're going to cover some very difficult topics today. I hope you can absorb as much as you can. It may be worth listening to every presentation more than once. I understand it'll take time to do that, but nevertheless, I'm the expert on technocracy. I wrote the books. I have the receipts, as they say. These are all my books. My latest book was The Evil Twins of Technocracy and Transhumanism. And I'll tease another book coming in November of 2025. This is my proposition today. Technocracy has always had the domination of man and mind, even from its inception in Columbia University in 1932. As technology advanced, it has been commandeered at every turn to support its stated purposes of the science of social engineering, number one, the abolition of private property, number two, scientific dictatorship, number three, and the capture of all resources, including people, among others. For the first time in history, technocracy has been wrapped in a political ideology and a religious system as well, and now it seeks to escape the boundaries of the United States. In other words, the new and expanded goal of technocracy is to build empire throughout the world using AI and cryptos, blockchain technology, as weapons of mass subjugation. This presentation will examine the first 9 months of the Trump administration to assess how this plan is being implemented and what to consider, going forward. Here you go.
And there has been a lot of news since this was released as well, so it's just further accelerated since when this was published too.
With a couple of new definitions about, what is technocracy in the first place? This is from the Technocrat magazine, that's the official publication of Technocracy, 1937. They said, technocracy is the science of social engineering, the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population. For the first time in human history, it'll be done as a scientific, technical, engineering problem. Period. End of subject. Furthermore, there will be no place for politics, politicians, finance, or financiers, rackets, or racketeers. Technocracy will distribute by means of certificate of distribution available to every citizen from birth to death. It's important to realize that technocracy wants to remove the political system altogether. They're doing a good job, basically, with the neutering of Congress, the neutering of the presidency. They're basically snatching power away from politicians. At some point, I think, personally, that the political class will be wiped out altogether. Not yet, but you can see the handwriting on the wall. So, technocracy in the 1930s made 7 requirements. These are all seen in the Technocracy study course. You can go find that on the internet. It's been scanned, and there's good copies. And 3 of those 7 requirements are as follows. Provide a continuous inventory of all production and consumption. Requirement number 4, provide a specific registration of the type, kind, etc. of all goods and services where produced and where used. Number 5, provide specific registration of the consumption of each individual plus a record and description of the individual. These requirements have never changed in almost 100 years. They could have been written today just as easily as they were written in 1934 in the first place. So we have to figure out today who are these people who are executing this plan in America on behalf of technocracy. We need to name names, in my opinion, so that you can have an understanding who's pushing this, who's the architects behind it. Well, here's one. Elon Musk, arch technocrat for sure. He was in charge of Doge in the early days of the Trump administration, and he's been circling ever since. Now we have another pal of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. He's been hiding in the shadows, but here's the founder of Palantir. His house philosopher is Curtis Yarvin, and he was also the guy that mentored J.D. Vance to enter into politics in the first place. Now Vance appears to be Thiel's man on the inside of the political system, and probably the next president of the United States. Then you have David Sachs, arch technocrat, billionaire, one of the original members of the PayPal mafia, along with Thiel and Musk. He's Trump's AI and crypto czar. What does that mean? Well, this is an appointed position. He doesn't have a salary, apparently. I can't find any record of a salary, but as a special advisor to the president, he's just considered the AI and crypto czar. His tenure should have been 130 days. That's the rules associated with being a special advisor to the president. However, he's still there, issuing orders, strategies, etc. Wow. Here's another arch technocrat, Mark Andreessen, the kingmaker. I call him the kingmaker. He was at the table when Trump selected all these people in the first place in late 2024 to assume positions within the government based on their qualities of technocrats. Mark Andreessen has chosen to be not visible, but nevertheless, I'm making him visible. Then you have arch technocrat Michael Kratsius, director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Kratsius was formerly the managing director of a company known as Scale AI. Scale is the largest, and I mean by far the largest dominant training facility for AI in the world. He has a company that employs some 220,000 members of people around the world to train AI to do its magic. So he's now on the inside as well. This is an appointed position, and I do not believe that he had to stand before the Senate to be confirmed. I could be wrong on that. Now we have arch technocrat Howard Lutnick. He will play in our discussion going forward. But Lutnick is a great friend of Elon Musk, and he and Musk kind of architected the Doge facility that we saw in the first months of the Trump administration. Now he's the Secretary of Commerce. Oh boy. lastly, we have arch technocrat Larry Ellison. Some of you have seen him on national TV. He's not, he doesn't like the limelight for sure, but every once in a while he gives interviews, and some people, but behind the scenes, consider Larry Ellison as the shadow president. I can't vouch for that because I'm not on the inside, but I'm just saying some people in the tech world consider Larry Ellison to be the big cheese calling all the shots. So the kingmakers of the Trump administration have a combined net worth of over $1.2 trillion. That's a lot of money. It probably is higher now than that because stocks have been going up recently, and their investments have been going up as well. So probably is higher than this, but this is what I can get at least by the end of 2024. These are the people that are driving the digital state. No question about it. They're betraying the MAGA movement and the populist movement in America. They're guided by this philosophy called the Dark Enlightenment, which we're not going to talk about today. I won't in any case, but their intent is to destroy America, but good. So we're just going to look now at this video of Larry Ellison telling you what he thinks should be happening in America and around the world. Let's take a listen to this.
When you come to government and what government's doing, there are artificial intelligence tools, and some of them I know that Oracle have developed around financial management for government. But also, tell us a bit about because you're right at the forefront of this revolution, what it means for what government should do in terms of its digital infrastructure, digital ID, data centers, and so on.
How do you take advantage of these incredible AI models? And the first thing a country needs to do is to unify all of their data so it can be consumed and used by the AI model. You have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. And in the Middle East, in the UAE, for example, they're incredibly rich in data. They have a lot of population data. The NHS in the UK has an incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform. So we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like.
So you're really, through the use of this, you're revolutionizing the way government works.
That's the idea. Move all data into a unified platform. What data? Well, for one, all healthcare data, all diagnostic data, that would include health data as well as societal information, all health records, all financial records and data, all population data. There's a lot of data, for instance, in the annals of Washington, D.C., about Medicare, about tax records, etc. All genomic data, that speaks of DNA, by the way. That's right, the collection of DNA. And then also geospatial data. He didn't talk about that, but this is clearly in writings that he's expressed along the way. So this is basically all of the data in the world that's important at this point. Where you go, where you move, who you're associated with, and then all your personal information as well. So in the first 9 months of the Trump administration, we saw first the sidelighting of the Federal Reserve on CDs, BCs, and that first executive order basically flat out told the Federal Reserve, you're off the case of creating central bank digital currencies. I'll explain why in just a minute. They created then a privatized system based on crypto and tokenization, a privatized separate system, financial system, not the Federal Reserve in charge. It created a new regulatory framework to support this new invention, if you will. It passed the Genius Act that was signed, the Enable Act that was signed. Several executive orders were signed to support the whole thing. Then all of the government data that was freed by Doge had been put into the AI cloud. And lastly, this is really important too, Palantir got into the saddle now with a $10 billion contract, mostly with the military, but also with the administration, to take all this data and roll it up, just like Ellison explained in the video. So now we can talk about the hijacking of national data. Well, Doge was never about saving money or increasing efficiency in the government. Never. Doge was planned by Musk, Lutnick, and Trump in specific in 2024. At least probably by June, July, they had it all figured out. And Musk was there all the way. Musk was on the outside of Doge. This is important as well. He never officially held a title other than special advisor to the president. And he left after 130 days, by the way, to the day, because that was as the regulations required him to exit the government after 130 days. But Musk was kind of the snake in the woodpile. He was obviously instrumental on having his people placed in positions of power within the government, technocrats all. But he himself, he was basically a fraud. He didn't have any authority whatsoever as the special advisor to the president. Trump could do something perhaps because he's the chief in charge, but Elon Musk, no. Everything he did was theater. But nevertheless, we'll see he and Thiel were paired up to put the people in there in the first place. And they fed them into the machine, if you will. Then they were spread to the whole system. So the data assault itself was orchestrated by Musk and Thiel. And they used shock and awe to spring the data immediately. You might remember all of the fights that took place when the Doge teams would show up into an agency and demand that they turn over all the keys to the data, the passwords, and everything else. And there was squawking going on. There was cries of agony going on in these agencies, especially the IRS, especially the Medicare health organization. They said, this is basically, you're stealing our data from us. Then, magically, government workers started to get sacked, seemingly indiscriminately, but this is according to this doctrine called RAGE, replace all government employees. That was part of the philosophy, by the way, that went along with Peter Thiel and his house philosopher.
And you can see how that it plays on some of these sovereignty or freedom or anarchy-based or natural law-based principles, which is government is slavery, or there's going to be no political solution and all of that. It kind of uses what people would term as like branding themselves as libertarian to impose this system, because people don't dig deeper. They think that it's part of the same kind of it's better than the government or whatever, but then it's ushering in this system.
Curtis Yarvin, and then through September, I counted 109 Doge teams that have been established in the government. Each team, by the way, has a minimum of 4 members. It can have more, but you have a tech member that leads the team. You have an HR person, an attorney, etc. You get the idea. So they were very uniform as they went into these departments with this team in place to spring the data. So all of a sudden, for all the people that were released because of rage, well, they said we have to replace those functions, if not the people. So we have to have AI now to monitor everything and create agents and departments based on AI. This has happened already before your nose. This was the secret goal of Doge in the first place. It was never revealed to the public that way. But now we know exactly what's happened. We can see the strategy that was employed to be taking over all of the data. Then, not suspiciously, but it figures that President Trump called in Palantir, Peter Thiel, and Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir. And specifically, Palantir was awarded a $319 million contract to roll all this data up that was previously freed by the Doge teams. This was the purpose of Doge. They were a conduit. They took all these streams of data and they put them into the cloud so Palantir could have access to it. So we can now talk about the hijacking of the monetary system as well, because this is an important cog in the scientific dictatorship idea.
And the Fed.
It was never about preventing the Fed from issuing CBCDs. Not at all. Executive Order 14178 says banning central bank digital currencies altogether. The Stable and Genius Acts were passed. Then a privatized payment system based on stable coins was erected. A privatized asset system based on tokenization was erected. And then we saw talk about the 680 million acres owned by the federal government. All the mineral rights, all the produce of that land. That's a huge asset. It's held in trust, supposedly, for the American people. But all of a sudden, something happens here. You'll see in just a minute. The reason that the central bank digital currencies had to be sidelined because the Fed only concerned itself about moving money around the world. It never had in view tokenization of assets. The Fed couldn't do that. Not in a million years. It's not in their charter. They were always concerned about payment tokens, if you will, payment-oriented crypto. And that didn't have this other capability of tokenizing assets. You'll see how this plays in. This is a very important step. So all of a sudden, all minerals, timber, water, and animals, at least on 680 million acres of land, that's a lot of land. Wow. All gold owned by the Treasury. We're not really sure how much Treasury has on its hands on gold at this point, because nobody's audited the Fed to find out where that gold is. Nevertheless, we have some gold, I'm sure. That potentially results in an asset-based economy with no debt. I'm hopefully going to have a white paper by the end of this year explaining what the implications are from a debt-based economic system to an asset-based economic system. You'll get the idea. But now let's understand now that Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, has been lusting publicly over the national resources that we have. So I want you to just connect the dot here. The Federal Reserve could not do this.
If you want to go further into this stuff, Catherine Olsen-Fitz has been talking about this for a long time. That she's been on some of these symposiums as well about this 500 trillion.
But now they can do it if they have a privatized, asset-based tokenization process to do it. Listen to this video. Go.
I flew down to Brownsville, Texas, right? And I met with Elon, and we spent 2 hours together. And I told him we were going to create the department Doge, right? And he did exactly that. He started laughing and he was happy. He goes, no, seriously. And I said, no, it's going to be called Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, but we're definitely calling it Doge for you. And he was just so lit, happy. He just thought it was funny. And that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
If you have the greatest capitalist in America and you can make him happy, that's pretty good. What is the balance sheet of the United States of America? What's everything we own and everything we have? I think it's worth $500 trillion. So then you say, okay, Howard, can you make 0.25% on it? Right now, if all of your assets are a giant mountain of palladium and gold, and you can't move it, and you have to just look at it and go, oh, that's so pretty. That's not going to help us. But we have land and we have minerals. So if we have 500 trillion and we can make 0.25%, if you give us a $500 trillion asset, can you make $1 trillion off of it? All right.
Hopefully.
I'm going to rename that famous department we just called it. We called it the Department of the Interior. Let's give it the real name. The Department of all the land and mineral rights of the United States of America. But the asset value of the United States of America, $500 trillion, the addressable market. Mm-hmm. Can Elon Musk and I come up with 0.25%, $1.25 trillion of revenues? And the answer is
Isn't that stunning? Isn't that stunning? 680 million acres on the chopping block to be digitized. By who? By companies basically that Howard Lutnick and his family have a majority interest in. You can't make this stuff up. These people have taken over our country. The technocrats have taken over our country at this point. So let's look at the action.
And I know this is American focused right now. The rest of it won't necessarily be US focused, but you can see that this is coming through with digital ID, which will be, subject in the future of this presentation, but this has been implemented worldwide, especially in Five Eyes countries, and
plan going forward. The action plan was released in July 2025 on the whitehouse.gov website, no less. It's called Winning the Race, America's AI Action Plan. You can look it up on the whitehouse.gov website. The URL is at the bottom, just in case you miss it. And this was under the authority of President Trump. He didn't write this, by the way. There's no way. But the principal authors of this study, or this action plan, Michael Kratsius, assistant to the president for science and technology. Remember his picture above? David Sachs, special advisor for AI and crypto. Remember his picture above? Yeah, arch technocrats all. Marco Rubio, acting as assistant to the president for national security national security affairs. He's a national security advisor at this point. He's also the Secretary of State. This has dual responsibility, and I don't ever remember when this was the case, but nevertheless it is. So he's on this as well, but not as Secretary of State, but as assistant to the president for national security affairs. So we know who wrote this document. It was arch technocrats, not Congress, not the president, but these arch technocrats who were dedicated at this point to overthrowing America for good and for all. Here you go. There were three pillars that we're going to discuss here. The action plan for building empire throughout the world. It's about the whole world now, not just America. We have our own problems in America. MAGA movement, the populist movement, has been totally betrayed at this point, in my opinion. But we can cry about our own misfortune, but now the technocrats, the arch technocrats, America is not enough for them. They want the whole world. Pillar 1 talks about accelerating AI and innovation. Pillar 2 talks about building AI infrastructure. And we see that basically 1 and 2 speak about programs like Project Stargate. You saw this in the first part of the administration, where President Trump got up with Larry Ellison, one of Ellison's few public appearances. Sam Altman was there as well. And, they basically said, the president said, I'm going to wipe away all of the regulations that will prevent you from doing this project to build AI. And
we know that since this has been out, Trump has merged with an aneutron fusion company, which is Breakthrough Energy, one of 2 or 3 in the world, which is doing real things with actual breakthrough energy that's going to work, from what I understand, if you follow the work of Ashton Forbes. So this pay-to-play, this kind of, give all the technocrats and transhumanists all of these different assets and kind of, out of the deal, right? And then in return, his part of the deal is the aneutron fusion, which is going to be the energy system for powering AI. But then pillar 3, lead in international AI diplomacy and security. This is really stunning to me because it speaks of building empire.
Here's the table of contents to the document. I just took a picture of it so you could see it. Export American AI to allies and partners around the world. Export American AI to allies and partners around the world. There's more, of course. Counter Chinese influence in international governance bodies. We can see that too. Strengthen AI compute, export control enforcement. They want to keep control of all the AI they export. Plug loopholes in existing semiconductor manufacturing export controls. They want to control that as well. They want to align protection measures globally. They want to ensure that U.S. government is at the forefront of evaluating national security risk in frontier models. So basically, the idea of, we'll see this in just a second, you'll see the idea of exporting all of this stuff to the world is to maintain control over it. And you should be able to see at that point if they can get any nation in lockstep with their technocratic ideals, they'll be captured for technocracy and probably forever captured by technocracy. So let's just look a little more here. Export American AI to allies and partners. That's the first one there. This is what it says. You can't make this up. Here's what they want to do. The United States must meet global demand for AI by exporting its full AI technology stack, hardware, models, software, applications, and standards to all countries willing to join America's AI alliance. I'll bet they're going to make an offer that any country can't refuse to join this AI alliance, because the technocrats will probably just say, if you don't join us, we're going to crush you. We'll destroy you basically by AI if you don't join us right now. But here's the big thing is the full AI technology stack. This is a term you see in the software and development world and the hardware world as well. This includes everything from top to bottom relating to the whole Monty, so to speak. Hardware, that's the data centers technology, right? That's like all of the data centers that are being run around America are built. They want to do this in other countries as well, but they want to control the building and the access control of those facilities. The models, that speaks of all the AI models that there is in America right now. The software then that runs these models on the platforms, the applications as well, like ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude and et cetera, Meta's expression of AI as well, and most importantly, the standards as well, how these things will be run in the first place, to all countries willing to join America's AI alliance. There's more. The last thing in that list, invest in biosecurity, recommend policy actions. Here's what it says. Require all institutions receiving federal funding, this is America only now, for scientific research to use nucleic acid synthesis tools and synthesis providers that have robust nucleic acid sequence screening and customer verification procedures create enforcement mechanisms for this requirement rather than relying on voluntary compliance. You see that what's happened here, all of a sudden, this concept of a national ID system has morphed into a biometric ID system based on your genomic data. That's your DNA, okay? That's just make this very clear. They want to have the technology developed to collect everybody's DNA and build that into the screening mechanisms that can guarantee you are a human, and furthermore, you are who you are. And beyond that, it's going to be mandated. The last statement, create enforcement mechanisms for this requirement rather than relying on voluntary commitments. You can't make this up, my friends. This is the standard for the world now. And they intend to first use it here, then they want to export it to the world. And if the world somehow buys into this scheme, America's had its detractors, by the way, for many years, the stuff they've done to foreign countries, especially in South America and Africa. So some countries are going to say, not on your chance, not a chance, or you're not going to pull this in our country. I'm sure there'll be exceptions, but probably the most industrialized part of the world, they'll adopt it in a heartbeat because they have to have America on their side. So the conclusion here is building world empire on the backs of digital slaves. We're the slaves, by the way, if you haven't already figured that out. People like Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, Peter Thiel, Michael Krasius, etc., Howard Lutnick. These are the arch technocrats who are enforcing, if you will, this whole system on the world, at least on America, and they intend to export it to the whole world. Thank you. Please do take an opportunity to go to technocracy.news. And I have over 6,600 articles over several years posted on this website.
Thank you to Patrick Wood for that. So I'm just going to pause this now and come back, and there should be no break up in this transmission. And we're back. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to split this up into 2 episodes. I didn't really want to do that because I wanted all of the symposium in one place, but I think that now that we've covered a couple of other things and this overview of Technocracy, I think we'll go through the rest of it in a separate upcoming video. So that's all for now, and I'll catch you in the next one. This is Cosmic Service. Ciao for now.